All right. So financing is major for most people. They feel like financing is like the biggest thing. Now, if you know better, can you tell me in the comments what you think is the biggest thing um to figure out to be able to do something in real estate? Yes, financing is important, and it's been seen as this big obstacle that you have to overcome first. Okay. But what do you think, if you know maybe a little bit better or you think differently about this, what would you say the biggest obstacle might be? What do you think, guys? uh, well, not from this list really. I'm just thinking generally to get into real estate, to get started. People are thinking, I don't have the money, I don't have the money, I don't have the money. So instead of thinking I don't have the money, what do you think the what's that biggest thing that stops people? Not from this list, sorry if that looks confusing to you, but I just mean like generally, what are people always thinking? Someone says consistency. um let's see what people are saying in the other group. Someone still thinks financing is the biggest thing. Okay. Okay. The right deal is actually the biggest thing. So when you get to know better, you know financing is a process, is a particular system, particular way to get your financing figured out, right? Whether you have money in your savings or you don't, you got to figure it out and you'll be okay. You can either have or not have, and you'll be okay. But knowing the right property, choosing the right property is really the biggest thing. So most people that make mistakes are actually people that have the money and go for something that they think is okay. Those are people that fall into weird situations. Someone says procrastination, the knowledge. Thank you for bringing out all these nuggets. Making the right decision, absolutely. Procrastination, that's true actually. Yeah, because every month you procrastinate, you're losing deals, right? Even if it's the information, the knowledge you're getting, intentionally saying this month I want to do this to achieve my real estate investing goal. You gotta put it on paper, you gotta plan. If you don't plan, it's highly unlikely to happen if it's not something that you're consciously trying to think about. So yes, you guys are right, making the right decision and all of that. So yes, financing is usually a top one for most people, and they feel like, well, if I have that figured out, I'll be fine. But most times you're not fine if you have that figured out. You probably just jump into something that doesn't make sense. Okay, so the location is also something you want to think about. Your investment goals is definitely what you want to think about. Like Queen was asking, what do I do? Fix and flip? What do I do? Passive, active? What exactly should I go into? Right. So your investment goals is more of what you want to do in the short term and what you want to do in the long term. What options are available to you? And then your time commitments. So maybe some of you guys feel like you work a full-time job right now, you're 100% committed to work, you're 100% committed to family. I mean, who isn't, right? We're all committed to that kind of lifestyle. As you know, normally that's really how we expect that life should be. 100% definitely committed to your family, which should be your number one, and then your job. And sometimes the job gets in the way, it's like the number one and the family suffers. Unfortunately, is a very common thing. But now you're thinking, with that struggle, you're feeling like, are you able to add on real estate investing? Is this something you can commit to? Do you have the time? Maybe you've heard horror stories of landlords that are dealing with horrible tenants, or maybe you've seen people who have done it the wrong way, and you don't know a lot about the story. You can't even check to see what went wrong. It's kind of hard, and you feel like, I don't know if I'll be making the same mistake. So that time commitment is definitely a big one for most people. And also the exit strategy. So what should I do? Should I fix and flip? Should I rent and all that? So one quick answer to what should I do? Exit strategy. The numbers. will determine the exit strategy. So you need to be able to do multiple exit strategies. That will be my quick answer. So when you're analyzing deals, when you're checking the numbers, what is this number looking like? Is it looking like a flip? Is it looking like a rental? Or would you just close your eyes on all deals and say, I'm only looking for that one thing that fits my goal of fix and flip, which doesn't make sense really, right? So the numbers determine the exit strategy and what to do with the deal. Okay. So different property types. There are things that we need to consider for different property types, how to choose the right property type for your first investment. There are different property types. Okay, so we want to consider the different property types. And I'm going to actually start with commercial real estate. So, commercial real estate is actually when you're talking about things like office buildings, when you're talking about retail spaces, you're talking about warehouses. Okay, now we're going to leave multifamily. We're going to talk about multifamily separately. But commercial is more like office buildings. You see buildings that CVS occupies, maybe even Walmart, um, maybe like top warehouses as well, maybe FedEx warehouse. So those buildings, they might not own them, right? They're probably on leases. For the most part, usually that's what it is. But these leases are long-term leases. Okay. So the good thing about those kind of leases is that they're long-term, which means a high income. So the terms on the lease can be like 10 years, right? So imagine having a tenant in there for 10 whole years that's consistently paying and you don't have to worry, right? So yeah, that income is definitely high. And then to cap it or to add to that nice benefit, tenants often cover property expenses in triple net leases. So triple net lease is where the tenant is responsible for paying all the property expenses. So in addition to the base rent that they're paying, they're also paying property taxes, property insurance, and they're also taking care of maintenance. So it feels like a breeze, right? To have CVS, Walgreens, Walmart pay you, have a 10-year lease and pay you consistently every single month. And of course, it's not a little bit of lease, right? Definitely a big chunk rent amount for a whole 10 years. So it's definitely pretty profitable. Definitely profitable. However, what are the downsides? You definitely need larger upfront capital, right? So is it easy to get in? Maybe not. You need to be able to, because the banks have to qualify you for those loans. You're going to need definitely a financial statement, personal financial statements or business financial statements. You got to have some experience and all that stuff. How many years in real estate? Do you have sponsorship, partnership, and those kind of things, right? So it's not that newbie friendly, right? Except you want a partner or you want to use sponsors. And then the other thing you want to know is it's riskier. Okay. It's definitely riskier because of economic downturns that affects businesses. So if a business goes out of and if they're going bankrupt or something, definitely your rents will be affected. And it's not really their fault, it's really economy dependent, right? Like you can imagine like during COVID when a lot of businesses were affected. And in comparison to residential, you're talking commercial, in comparison to for residential, people always need a place to live. Trust me, everyone that couldn't come to work during COVID had a house, hopefully, right? They had to go back home. So residential, people will always need residential, right? But a business can choose to operate differently where they don't need an office space or they decide to go virtual, right? So if they leave, you're talking about longer vacancies, right? So a long time, you're probably paying the mortgage without any rental income. How many of you guys have seen like vacant properties where CVS just left, Walmart just left, or Walgreens merged, or I believe Rite Aid at the time merged with Walgreens and they were like vacant? Did you guys see vacant buildings? Have you seen any vacant buildings? Please type in the comments if you've seen any vacant buildings for a long time. Like you're like, how many more years would it take for this building to be occupied? Have you guys seen that? So I know that this is making sense. Is this realistic? Have you guys seen maybe when you're driving, you see a building that Rite Aid used to occupy and now no one is there? It's still vacant. Anyone seen that? Yes. Yes. I see a couple of yeses here. Okay. Yes. True. And it could be more than a year, more than 2 years, more than 3 years. And as the owner, you're responsible to pay, to keep paying the rent. So when you're earning, um, on this side where they're occupied, when you're earning, you gotta save for the future, right? You gotta save. You gotta have a huge pockets for times like this. So that's, you know, the thing you should be asking. Do you think that commercial is something you want to do right now, considering that it's best for experienced experienced investors with more capital and more risk tolerance, right? So that is a question you should answer. Do you think commercial real estate is something you want to get into right now? Yes, no. Okay. And then up next is multifamily properties. So multifamily properties will be things like duplexes, maybe a side by side duplex, or maybe they're mounting on top of each other, or maybe they're side by side but not so side by side in one building. One is in the front, one is in the back. Maybe you have another one on each side or something. So it could be duplexes, could be triplexes, it could be fourplexes. Okay. So the pros of multifamilies would be less vacancy impact. And what this means is you can, if one, let's say you have a fourplex, that's a 4 unit property. If one unit is vacant, you can still afford the mortgage, hopefully, right? You can probably even still cash flow depending on the numbers before you got in, right? So there's less impact when someone leaves, so you got to screen someone to that vacant property and life goes on. So that is a big advantage of multifamilies. The other one is easier entry. If you're talking about 4 units or less, yes, multifamilies can also be 5 units or more, but the difference is when you're at 5 units, you're qualified as commercial. So the stringent mortgage requirements for commercial would also apply to you at 5 units and up. It's just like when you're buying apartments. So 4 units and less are considered residential and they're easier to get into. Okay, so you have easier entry. The same way you would qualify for mortgages on single family properties is the same way of appraisal. You don't need to talk about cap rates when considering 4 units or less. But with 5 units or more, you're talking cap rates, you're talking different dynamics as well. And also the way that you're financing the property is different. And experience comes less into play with multifamilies at 4 units and less compared to 5 units and more. So it's also still newbie friendly. And yes, you can qualify for residential loans for properties with 4 units or fewer. The downside would be, the higher purchase price initially. If it's 4 units, maybe you're talking in this day and age over 400,000, over 500,000. And if you had to bring a certain percentage down, it's higher than if it was just 1 unit. And then the other thing is you got to think about the management responsibilities. So you don't just have one tenant in this building, you have multiple tenants. Now, if you have a water situation or heating situation, because usually the heating can be central, right? Especially on older properties where you've not been able to separate the meters on each unit. So if the heat is central, then more tenants have an issue, which is not good. And then you gotta, and then if it's like something that has to do with servicing each unit at once, it can be a lot. Or even if it's spread out throughout the year, where one tenant has an issue in January, another tenant has an issue in March. So maybe you're busy and hands-on throughout the year. Not, you don't have to be hands-on, but the management responsibility is higher. You don't have to be the manager. You can always hire, but it's something you need to be aware of, that you might get a little bit more tenant calls on this than if you were obviously if you were single family, right? So if you're looking for cash flow, that's a great idea, where you know you have less impact on your cash flow with anyone that leaves, or when you're doing a turnover on one unit, life still goes on. Okay. So yes, if you're willing to hire a property manager, fine. If you want to try this out on 4 units or less for a year and see how it goes for you, if you are doing great, it's fine. Some people do great, especially if you're screening the right tenants. You're able to screen right. You're doing well. If you have no clue, just hire someone from the scratch. Don't try your hands on something if you don't have a system to go by. So because the experience can be really bad, you don't want to get to that point. But if you feel like you have a system that should work pretty good for tenant screening, which is the number one thing with property management, if you have the right tenants, you are good. You are good. And then the other thing would be maintenance, right? So if you have the right team, you have the right tenants, it should be good. There shouldn't be an issue. I see a lot of people running away from this, and I'm wondering what you want to do with your life, right? If there's a solution to what you're running away from, why don't you take it? Why don't you budget from your cash flow, property management, so you can live a stress-free life? Okay. All right. So the other one is single family homes. Single family homes, as you can tell, they're easier entry. Okay. So as far as financing goes, uh, earlier today we're looking at like an 80K property with Damilola, right? The property was 80K. Uh, we found some auction properties as well. That's and people are buying. So yesterday, a student bought a property at 60K, another one at 62K. um a cash flow of 700 on one, 600 on the other one, right? So very easy to get into, because if you're talking about the 10% down for hard money to be able to eventually do a cash out refinance, it's like 6,000, right? It's like 8,000 on 6,000, 8,000 if you included like closing costs and stuff like that. Maybe worst case scenario 10,000, and with $10,000 you're getting a cash flow close to $1,000 every month, and that means in a year you've pretty much made your down payment. So it's very easy to get into, and then over time you can merge your portfolio and go into a higher portfolio if it makes sense for you. I love the cash flow on single families, because if you're making the argument of vacancy, I can also make the argument that if I had 20 properties and one is vacant, I shouldn't have a problem, right? There's cash flow in my system to make up for that. But I get it, if it's just one property, you can feel like, oh my goodness, there's no tenants in this one. And so you kind of feel a certain way. So some people actually choose to do single families only, and they keep going because it works for them. They're able to build generational wealth that way. So you don't have to graduate from single family to multi, except you see that the deal makes sense. In this day and age, like commercial multis, like 5 units plus, hardly make any sense for cash flow. Sometimes you have like a 40 unit property being advertised, and you're only getting a cash flow of 40,000 in a year. That's even if you're lucky, right? 40,000 in a year. You can do 40,000 in a year on one single family property if you were doing like Airbnb. And sometimes you don't even have to do that to get to that kind of cash flow. So just things for you to consider. Single family can actually be amazing and fast, can get you to your financial goals fast if you have a good system, or if you have a clear goal or a clear pathway together. Okay. And the other thing is long-term occupancy. So, if you compare that side by side with like multi-families, and if you compare it side by side with apartment buildings, most people want to move from apartments to a house, right? Because it looks better. You have some privacy. You probably even have a garage. It looks decent on you. As your family grows, you probably are you're outgrowing that apartment building, right? So people eventually move. And depending on the inconvenience, I know some apartment buildings that have central heating where you can't even control the heat. So during the winter, sometimes you're opening up the window because it's boiling in there. You don't expect people to stay that long, right? So those are things to consider. You're able to get more long term. If you're seeing a tenant lasting 10 years, which we definitely have seen, with single family properties, definitely single family, it's that number one thing that helps people live in that way where they feel comfortable. And maybe right now they're thinking, well, I don't want to buy a house right now. I want to see if the interests can go down. Moreover, I'm comfortable where I am. So those are the kind of thoughts that are going through people's minds when they choose a property to rent. And so you can enjoy that long term occupancy. Okay. Compared to multi-family. The other thing is you actually have lower maintenance. So the way that we structure our leases with single family is the tenant is definitely responsible for whatever they're using, right? So if it's heats, if it's water, the reason why landlords cover heat in apartment buildings because they can't really separate in buildings where they cannot separate what each tenant is using. It just makes sense to include that in the rent. But if you're renting something, you're paying for what you're using. If you're paying for your water and sewer, you're paying for your lights, you're paying for your heating, and that's just fair on everybody. Because if you're making the landlord's responsibility, you can, if you're not responsible for it, then you're gonna waste it, and then the landlord might not make any money, right? Or the landlord might have to come out of pocket if you decide to open up your windows all winter long. So if there's risks when you include things, so you got to really think about it. But you have lower maintenance for the most part. These tenants take care of the single family homes as a property. They start to get this home ownership vibes and culture that they incorporate, because moreover they see other properties to the right, to the left, and they want to be like them. But in a situation where there are multiple tenants, everybody denies responsibility. Oh, I'm not responsible for trash, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. So they leave everything up to the landlord. So that's just something for you to be aware of with single family. So good sites. And the other thing right here is the single cash flow from one property. And that's if you just only have one property, you only have one single cash flow. So why don't you add on another property, right? Then the vacancy impact, if it's just one property, it means that you have 100% income loss, which you don't want. Okay. So if it's just one property, you have 100% income loss, right? So those are things to consider. If you had to choose between buying one single multifamily and buying one single family, you got to think about it. And if you only want to buy one, then think about what you're doing. Okay, so someone says, please repeat, Joy, please repeat what you said. What's I've said a lot, and I don't know at what point you typed this. What would you like me to repeat? Please let me know in the comments and I'll come back to check on that. Okay. Cool. So if you're a beginner and you want a simpler hands-on investment, if you want to be hands-on, you don't have to be also. If you have just one single family, it's probably just okay for you to manage that. But if you're far away and you're really looking to expand within a short period of time, maybe it would just be a great idea to incorporate to install property management right off the bat. Okay. I'm just going to check Joy to see if she has typed anything. She hasn't, so I'm going to keep moving for now. Okay, so next we have short-term rentals. Okay, and this is a single family strategy. It could also be a multi-family strategy. So things like Airbnb, vacation homes. Are you thinking of doing Airbnb? So the reason we do short-term rentals is really for the high cash flow, because on a monthly basis you earn more, right? So you have higher potential cash flow compared to long-term rentals, okay, with single families, maybe even multi, right? However, you got to maintain the property condition, which is good, because actually I wouldn't call this a however, because like if you leave a property in this condition for a while, for years, it's actually ready to sell. Because the way we're living this, because you want to get 5-star reviews on on Airbnb. So this property, after 5 years of doing that, hardly needs anything for it to go on the market, because you've kept it up, maintained. But if you have like a tenant in there, you don't really know what's going on. You don't know if you'll have to paint when they leave. You don't know the extent of damage, or of which, you gotta get security deposits. Most people don't want to lose their money, and these days actually security deposits are around 2 months, right? After screening the right tenants, you still gotta do security deposit, and if you're already charging 2 months of security deposit, people want to get their money back, because it might not be cheap. It might be 4,000 right there, might be um an 1,800, another 1,800. I think 1 month security deposit is really risky. I would say that the least you should do is maybe a month and a half, 2 months, to be really safe, and that way the tenant is very careful. Highly likely that if a tenant doesn't have 2 months security, then you probably are wondering if their income is even enough, right? So they're not stressed out paying the rent, which can have an impact on whether you're getting rent or not. So those are things you do in the beginning of your screening, right? To make sure you're not stuck with a tenant that's not performing. Okay, so you have your property's condition maintained over time, which is a good thing. That means you won't have one big repair, maintenance situation or update situation that you have to take care of at once, which can be in thousands. Right? Then it's easy to enter. The reason is easy to enter is actually because of rental arbitrage. If you've heard of arbitrage, please let me know in the comments. Have you guys heard about arbitrage, rental arbitrage, where you have you don't have to buy the property. You rent from a landlord to sublease for Airbnb. So you go to a landlord and say, "Hey, I want to lease your property." However, it would be for Airbnb, not the way that I said it. So don't try it that way. There's definitely a system to it. Okay. And we talk about all of that. It's easy to get in with arbitrage, right? So arbitrage means you're subleasing the property. So you're renting from a landlord and you're subleasing for Airbnb. Okay. So you bypassed the whole financing situation. However, you still gotta furnish the property and make sure everything looks good. So there are definitely ways around that. And so it's easier to get in if you're not looking to buy a property yet and you want to do cash flow. You just want to get cash flow from a property that you don't own, which happens all the time. I won't even tell you my experience and all the deals that I've done with arbitrage, with lease options, and all the good stuff. So, yes, that is reality. Okay. So, downsides of short term rental, as you would know, you can guess, is the monthly income will vary, right, throughout the year. So, it's seasonal. So, in months from I'm gonna say October to ending of February, it can be slow. And in those months, really, in the beginning, when you're when you're analyzing your deal, you're putting that into consideration and making sure that at least your mortgage or rent is covered, right? At a minimum, right? So For some, in those months, they're not making that much cash flow, or they're barely making cash flow. But when you get start to get to summer, it booms. It's a lot of cash flow, which ends up making up for itself. But when you take the average for the whole year, you're gonna see it's a good chunk of cash flow, except you haven't done your homework for the area and for the property. So that is really what it is. You gotta plan it out, right? You gotta plan for the slow seasons. So that's one downside to it. It's seasonal. It would be nice to have booming cash flow all year round, but it's not that way. Okay. With the hospitality space. And then the other thing is, to have this property in this condition for a long time, you're not just sitting down watching, right? If a guest says this is broken, you gotta fix it. So you have active management. But however, if it's something that's caused by the guests, the Airbnb policy covers it. So you got to report that damage. Now I'm talking about Airbnb, but there are other platforms, right? So check the platforms and what they would do. But Airbnb does a great job at covering expenses from guests' damages and also screening guests. And you can see guest ratings and all that. So there are ways to make sure that you're getting the right guests and approving the right guests for the property. Or you can also hire a property manager for a short-term rental property manager. And these days there are a lot of virtual managers that do a great job. Okay. So it does involve active management. And the other thing you want to know is local regulations can restrict short-term rentals, right? So before you go negotiating with a landlord in a particular area to lease their property or sublease their property, make sure that that local area actually allows it. So now you're talking about a whole state, it doesn't even matter. Now you go to the town, right? Local, it has to be local regulations. You go to the town. Now, if it's an HOA, you gotta go to make sure that even if the town allows it, the HOA, uh, homeowner association, might not want that. So gotta make sure that you go as local as possible to inquire and make sure that you're finding short-term rentals. So short-term rentals, as you can see, is best for people who are willing to put in the extra work in hospitality, or hire the right people who can help with the hospitality work. But your efforts get rewarded pretty nicely throughout the year. So that's something you might want to think about. And next, let's talk about condos and townhouses. So condos, you are thinking usually they have lower purchase prices. They're not that expensive, except they're in very expensive towns. And actually, I understand right now there are actually some towns that the condos are actually very expensive. You're going to see really nice condos with garages and all that, but those are expensive. Now, generally speaking, a regular townhouse that's just side by side in an okay area, average area, would be lower in purchase price. Okay, so they would have a homeowner association, and the good thing is some of the maintenance can be covered. So, maintenance like roofing and landscaping can often be covered. So, any shared facility that needs to be fixed. For example, the roofs sometimes can be joined together with the next property. So, they often include that kind of maintenance in the HOA. So that means you're paying HOA fees, and they're taking care of maintenance, they're taking care of snow removal if you're in a snow area, and they're taking care of major things like roofing. And of course, it's easier to manage remotely because you have this maintenance covered. So you don't have to mow the lawn, you don't have to clear snow, and just it's just easier. And elderly people, it's probably a great idea for elderly people who can't do all this yard work. So the same way it's good for elderly people, the same way it's good for someone who's remote, so a remote investor. So if you choose to be that, if you're like an out of state investor, maybe it might not be a bad idea. However, you gotta wait. Are you just going for the convenience or you want to go make money? Right. So the downside is the HOA fees can be high and unpredictable. Okay. I've seen HOA fees as high as $900, $600. It can be high. I've seen as low as $40, right? So you need to know if this is a townhouse or if it's a condo, make sure you understand the HOA and include that in your deal analysis. Okay. So the HOA fees can be high and unpredictable, and you also have less control over the property. Yes. Due to HOA rules, the HOA can say that you're not allowed to rent the property, which means that area is only for owner occupied buyers. So if you're buying a home in an area, they might not want you to rent it. If they allow you to rent it, they might not want you to do short term rentals. They might have strict rules and regulations, right? So, in addition to the HOA fees, where you don't know if next year the HOA fees will be higher, you don't really have control to diversify your exit strategy with properties that have HOA. Most times, they're okay for flip, where you buy for cheap, put in work, and sell. But now, if you're holding the property, you really want to know, consider if you want to be stuck with this kind of situation of less control for a long time. So think about that. Okay. And then the other thing is you might be dealing with less appreciation. So, because these are lower purchase price properties and they don't appraise as much, they don't appreciate as much as single family properties over time. Okay, so over time, they may not be worth a lot more. They may not match up with the appreciation in the area. So that's something you want to consider. So the appreciation potential may be lower. Okay, but if you're looking for low maintenance properties in urban or vacation markets, or you know, you just we're looking for low maintenance. There are different reasons why people would choose different investment properties. Not everybody's out to make money, I guess. Also depending on the age and what have your motivation. So yes, but yeah, if you're looking for low maintenance, that's really where to go. If you're with me, please type with me. I wish that you know I could hear you guys talk, but it is the way it is with live sessions. Okay, so type with me, please. I want to make sure you're all here. Hi, everyone. Good evening. If I haven't said hi to you or you're just joining us, welcome to our training. We're getting there. Okay, please let me see that. Just let me know you're here and listening. Anyone here? Hey, guys on Facebook. Hey, guys on Instagram. Are you here? Am I disconnected? Okay, so Instagram says with me. Cool. Okay, cool. I see thumbs up. Okay, perfect. 100%. I'll say 100% thumbs up. Okay, cool, cool. So we're still together. Cool. Okay, nice. So that's what we're seeing with HOAs and with condos and townhouses. Okay, so now house hacking. Is this something that you should be doing? Should you be house hacking? What is hacking? House hacking is really you're buying a multi-family. Oftentimes, side by side doesn't have to be. Can be 2 units, whether up by up, side by side, back by front. Whatever the arrangement is irrelevant. But you're within the same building as another unit. So you are occupying one of the units, and other unit is rented. Okay, and a lot of people who have no clue how real estate investing works as a real estate investor go with house hacking. And a lot of people tell me, I want a house hack, just want a house hack, because you don't have an idea how anything else works. Okay, cool. So it's easy to enter, easier entry. You Most people get like a traditional, actually it has to be a traditional mortgage, so a conventional mortgage, right? The same way you go get a mortgage for your house is the same way you're going to go get a mortgage for this property, because the investor mortgages are not for owner occupied properties. This is an owner occupied situation. Okay, so you're getting a conventional mortgage, a traditional mortgage, and one good thing is you may live rent free, right? Uh, if it's a really bad deal, you're gonna be paying rent still. Well, you're gonna be paying mortgage. Depending on how bad the deal is, you you might be in the same situation as if you just bought a regular single family property for yourself to live in. But hopefully, the if the property price higher, maybe you're thinking more appreciation, if that's what you're looking for. But yes, you may live rent free, or you might not, or you might just have a reduced rent by paying less mortgage. Actually, I know someone who's house hacking, but they're paying more in mortgage than what they were paying in rents before that. I don't know how people are making decisions like that, but just FYI, you gotta be smart about it. Are you really gonna be living rent free? So you gotta calculate that number, and don't just automatically assume that if you buy a multi-unit and you live in one unit that you would be living rent free. So you may live rent free, and that can be a good benefit. The downsides to consider is you may have decreased privacy depending on the setting. If someone is in front, someone's at the back, maybe not so much. If you have a tenant that hardly is there, maybe not so much, right? But yes, for the most part, they know that their landlord is next door, and sometimes it's an issue. Sometimes it's kind of hard, right? So think about that. Do you If you're someone who's really private, that might not be the best deal for you. That might not be the best thing to do. I am that way. I feel like everyone should be able to, you know, have privacy if they need that. So you don't have like a nosy neighbor talking about whatever you're doing, or whatever it is, or taking you for granted because they know you that well. And hopefully that doesn't play into rent payments. So that's something you should be aware of. If you have ways around this, by all means. The other thing to consider is it may limit your home choice. Okay, so you're saying you want a house hack, but your family needs to move. You need to move. And because this is only, I mean, there are not a lot of multifamilies out there that are for sale, right? So you found this multifamily, and you're like, well, I got to go for it. I don't like where I'm going to be living, but, I have to house hack. So maybe the kitchen is not the size you want. Maybe you don't like the bathrooms or even the living room. Now you choose to inconvenience yourself because you're trying to invest in real estate. I don't believe you have to inconvenience yourself to invest in real estate. So just be aware of this. It may limit your own personal home choices. Then the other thing is you're taking personal responsibility for a business. Okay. So this property is in your own name versus if you are investing in a real estate, a regular real estate property under your LLC business. It's different. So the business is separate from you. So you're not taking responsibility for the business, so to speak. The LLC has a separate liability from you. So, God forbid, a tenant falls, right? And they're suing, right? So if you're taking personal responsibility, that means everything you own personally is at risk. So your savings, your personal car, your whatever you own, you are the one on the mortgage. It has your own personal name. Versus if you didn't have anything to do with the property, it was under an LLC, then the LLC is liable for the property, right? And then you also are able to put measures in place to protect your LLC, right? So your personal liability is really at risk. That's something you need to know, that you won't hear people tell you you are going to be at risk for whatever happens personally. Okay, so it's a slow way to invest. It's slow. So if you're thinking of going fast, how many houses do you want to live in to have multiple properties in your portfolio? Because sometimes when you're starting out, you get bad advice from people. You get bad advice from some realtors. I'm sorry, because that also happened to me. They're like, oh, live in this one, get FHA, live in this, then you move after 2 years. For heaven's sake, how many times do you want to move in your lifetime? That is unstable. So, and it's slow because guess what? If you cannot move that year, you can't buy a property. You gotta buy it next time, or next time in the next 5 years you try to move again. So this is not, in my opinion, and common sense wise, it's very slow. So think about it if you really need that. I came to understand that I didn't need house hacking a long time ago. So when that realtor said that, I said, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something faster, something I can do deals year round, more deals every year, and not be limited to where I live. So think about it. Okay. So that is house hacking. Okay, if you're on Facebook, I'm gonna go into the resource for tonight. You gotta wait to get your resource because Meg is here. She's gonna send it to everyone. But if I talk about the resource, if you're on Facebook, so make sure, because I hear a lot of people say they didn't know when the training happened, they missed the training. Make sure you click on this right here, this button right here that says joined, and the drop down menu will show you manage notifications. So when you click on manage notifications, you're going to click all posts and save. That's the only way you're going to get notification when we're going live, right? Because you already know we don't spam in this group. Every post needs to be approved. So any notification you're getting is because it's important. So click on all posts and save. That way you're not missing out on any trainings. Okay, so we're going to go into our resource for the night. The resource will say red flags to watch for in property deals. So it has a list of red flags to watch for in property deals. So type red flag in the comments if you want that resource. Type red flag in the comments. Okay. Now, how many of you guys here? I know we went through a lot, but how many of you guys here feel overwhelmed and you need a lot of help? Type yes in the comments if you feel that way. If you feel like you will need direction to, or some kind of direct guidance to start buying properties. Maybe you even know that you can't afford any property, but you'd like to learn the tricks of what really happens when you're buying a property with no money out of pocket, right? No money out of pocket, no money down, no money out of pocket. Yes, if that's you, just type yes in the comments. So if you need direction, guidance to make the right choices as you go, type yes in the comments. How many yeses in the comments? And also remember the red flag comments so that you can get your resource. Okay. Someone here says, Danisha says, I need help starting. Yes, I see yeses. I see yes. She says yes. Um, Anne Marie, Danny. I know this is good resource, right? But I understand that it's good if you already have something going where you don't really need any extra help. It's just in addition to what you already know and what you're already implementing. But if you need extra help, people need help all the time. There are times when I need help as well. So type yes in the comments. And I'm going to go on Instagram. So I see a bunch of yeses. Meg, please take notes. And I'm just going to go ahead. Well, cool. That's pretty cool. Then what we're offering you guys is still much needed, is what I see. If you're tired of going around in circles, I want to start doing it the right way, type coaching in the comments and we'll have a conversation with you to see if the coaching program is a right fit for you. So your discovery call will be free, but you guys need to know one way or another, you still have to invest in yourself. So you need to get comfortable with that. If you're not investing in yourself, I don't know how far you want to go. So just know that eventually you're going to need to invest in yourself after getting a lot of free stuff, which we're not tired of giving you guys, but eventually see how you can invest in yourself. Just like you go into college and then the college puts you in a situation like this with student loans and barely even able to achieve your goal financially. How much more if you invested in yourself outside of school where you're making money or you're talking about investments? These are things nobody teaches you in college. Okay. In college is how much you know. Okay. So if you want to compress your learning circle or cycle so that you're ready to do your first deal within 6 weeks, type coaching in the comments and we will reach out to you. Okay. Please say hi, say good night to everyone in the comments. If you're in coaching here, I'll see you soon. And I'll see the other folks during the next live session. During the next live session, don't forget to type coach in the comments. Thank you everyone for being here. Please say good nights to everyone. Let's maintain that community. Say good good night. Good night to everyone. I want to say hi and good night. Say good night to everyone. Everyone, I'll be sending you DMs. Okay. Meg says she'll be sending you guys DMs. Okay. And we'll see all this. Everyone, so there's a good chunk of people who need coaching here. So Meg, please take notes. And you guys, please say good night to everyone here. Good night to everyone. People are taking notes. We have really consistent people here and they know you. Some coaching students are here too. So the more you contribute or say something or type something, the more you're seen, the more we know you, and the more you can get help. So say hi to everyone. Thank you for being here and have